Shalom, this is Steve. We're from the Nation's Ninth Above, and we have a special treat for you today. We are going to go up, we're going to make Aliyah, ascend to the Temple Mount, the place where the temple once stood, the place where the Jewish people came to worship, where God placed his name. But we're not going to go up there just to remember the past. What we're there to remember is the future. For God says he will return, and he will have zeal for Zion, and he will dwell there. And the word of the Lord will come from Jerusalem, and the law will go forth from Zion. Well, today we're going to take a trip into the past and in the future with Rabbi Yehudah Glick. Rabbi Glick is an incredible man. He has had a passion and zeal because he knows this is the place where all nations will come up to worship the Lord. Rabbi Glick he's been part of the Temple Institute. He was Temple Mount Heritage Foundation. He's currently chair of the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. He's been a Knesset member and a passionate advocate for the Temple Mount for many, many years. As a matter of fact, his passion and zeal resulted in an assassination attempt on his life. Just in 2014, where a young Arab came up point blank, shot him in the chest 4 times. But miraculously, he lived. Because God has called him. God needs men like him that have a zeal and passion for his house. So today, I'm excited because we are going to be following Rabbi Yehudah up onto the Temple Mount. And he's going to share what God has done and what he will do with all of us. Let's go on the trip together.
We're right now standing on the outskirts of the Temple Mount. And you can just let's get a little bird's eye view of the Temple Mount. Can you see it right now?
Yes.
Bird's view. Okay, so we are going to be entering this is the western side, the southern side, the northern side, and the eastern side. The eastern side and the northern side. We will be entering right over here at this gate, which is on the southwest corner. We're going to go along the south, go along the east, the north, and we'll come out again on the west. Just to get a picture of it, we're talking about something that's the size of like 10 football stadiums. It's a very, very big compound. In the center, the peak of our concentration will be this building over here, the Dome of the Rock, which preserves the rock, which was the highest point on the Temple Mount, and it was the location of the Holy of Holies, so that the temple stood from over here this way, and it was like a rectangle right over here, and we can see it over here. Just like a little picture of the history of it. Here is a beautiful National Geographic thing. I don't know if you can see very well, but if you take a look, this is the mountain. Time of Abraham, King Solomon builds the first temple, and this over here is the Herodian temple, and this over here is the Dome of the Rock. So here we are, like a small picture in history, Jerusalem's holy ground. And I hope you were able to see what I'm showing you. I don't know if you were able to, but we will be seeing the Temple Mount itself shortly. Meanwhile, I'm Yehudah Glick, from the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. That is shalomjerusalem.org. Talking to you from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, preparing ourselves for Tisha B'Av. Oh, now my Uri has connected. We are right now ready. It is exactly 1 minute to 9 Israel time. Israel, those of you who are not aware, the country in the Middle East, bordering with Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and the Mediterranean Sea. And it is today under the sovereignty of the State of Israel, but we have some regulations here due to the fact that the state here, which was established by the people of Israel, is also many of the population of the Muslim population here are not extremely satisfied with the fact that we are here, and therefore the police here are in charge of the public order. I'm just going to find out 1 second. More at the Okay, we got permit to go. Guys, we're going. Now, listen, on the Temple Mount itself, They don't allow us to pray or to sing, but we will be, of course, praying. And we're not going to be able to sing too loud. But as we go up, we will definitely be getting ourselves ready. It means we're going to clean our hearts from any kind of anger, any kind of negative feelings. And we are right now climbing on this bridge before the entrance to the Temple Mount. We are really getting ourselves ready. We're not going for a visit of like fun, amusement, not even sightseeing. We're going for sightseeing, meaning we want God to see us, and we want to be seen by God, and we want to really prepare ourselves properly. We're going with humility. We're not going to announce, here we are, guys, we're here. No, not at all. We're going to be servants of God. We're going there as servants of God, going up to the house of God, thanking God for the privilege of being able to go up to the house of God, something that for many generations we were not allowed to do. But we will definitely go up and praise the Lord. We'll sing Ahaviotim El Al-Kochi Ay 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 v'simachti Evei tefilati Ay 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 v'simachti Evei tefilati Oloteihem v'zivcheihem Ratzon al mizbechi Oloteihem v'zivcheihem Ratzon al mizbechi Tivei tefila yikare lechol ha'amin. Tivei tefila yikare lechol ha'amin. I was singing the song that Temple Mount will be a house of prayer for all nations. As we're standing over here, I'm going to show you what the compound of the Western Wall looks like right now. You'll see it's divided into sections. That's due to COVID-19. So there's section. Usually you would see the Western Wall Plaza all open for prayer for everybody. Now we're in the what's called capsule, meaning they're everybody's supposed to be separated. They're all wearing masks, and that's what the Western Wall compound looks like. By the way, just want to remind you, the Western Wall compound we're talking about here, it's a very small part of the Western Wall. The wall of the Temple Mount is surrounded by 4 walls. The western one is 500 yards long, and the plaza we just saw over here is only 60 yards long. So that's like small little fraction. The Temple Mount compound we're going on to right now is 25 times the size of the Western Wall plaza. So we are right now, as I said, entering the gate. We will be entering the gate. We'll be accompanied by Israeli policemen, and from afar we'll also have probably some Jordanian Waqf people. But we are right now entering a wall built by Herod, and we are just right now, this moment, we have entered the Temple Mount compound, and this means that we are in the courtyard of God Almighty. And I want to take us back to the history. According to Jewish tradition, God created the world from here. What does it mean He created the world from here? It doesn't mean that God took cement or took sand from this location. It means that this is the core of the whole creation. And I want to try to understand the concept. God created man also from here, it says. It says God created man in His image. And that means that the concept, the essence of the actual building of the creating of the world is concentrated over here. Right before I continue my explanation, I want to, because we're passing by a very important part, I want to just point out what you can see over here to my right, which is actually the exact corner of the southwest corner, are columns. So here are the columns, as I said, from many of them from the Herodian period, and they are Zoa, where Herod, aside from the temple is located, as you can see, in the center. Here you can see the Dome of the Rock to my left, which is north from where I'm standing right now, where we're standing right now. That is the location of the temple. So Herod has a stoa, which is a courtyard with a roof on top of it, but with column pillars that are holding the roof, that he actually accepts his guests alongside the southern part of the Temple Mount. Back to where we were speaking about before, I want to take us back to Abraham and to Adam, and man created. God put them in the Garden of Eden. According to the Bible, the Garden of Eden is also located here on the Temple Mount. If you recall the verses in Zechariah 14 or in Ezekiel 44, where the water will be coming out in the future from the Temple Mount, bringing water even to the Dead Sea, bringing life to the world, like the rivers in the Garden of Eden. But we want to continue a little bit in history, and one of the most important stories booked in the book of Genesis is the Babylonian Tower. In the Babylonian Tower, we would seem all humanity was united around building a tower. What would be so wrong with that? What's wrong with why was God aggravated? And it's quite obvious. When the center part of the Tower of Babylon is, the people say, we will make for ourselves a name. What does that mean, make for ourselves a name? It means leaving an impression in the world, leaving a reputation in the world, so that everybody who comes here will know these people built it. If you recall the Torah there in Genesis 10, 11, talks about, Genesis 11, talks there about, they specifically used bricks, not stone, not wood, which are things made by God, but bricks made by humans. They wanted to show off the human greatness. But the Torah and the creation of the world was to announce the greatness of God. And therefore, after this story comes out Abraham, who's teaching the world the name of God. And he establishes altars all over where he will calling in the name of God. Calling in the name of God does not mean calling to God, not praying to God, but calling in the name of God, meaning telling the world that we are all created by God to call out his name, to announce in the world that we're all part of one God. Now, later on, when God, in the book of Deuteronomy, when it talks about the establishment of a house of God, it talks about the place where God chooses for his name, for his reputation to be established. If we go back to Abraham and we see Abraham establishes his altar not every single day. He establishes these altars when he has a great victory over great kings, and whether it's Abimelech or Pharaoh, he comes and calls in God's name. And this is a very important thing, because to us now we're talking about Tisha B'Av, we're getting ready for that, and here is the concept of what it means. So people say, why don't you go build the temple? The temple is not another synagogue. The temple, if you recall, when Solomon establishes temple number 1 in the first book of Kings, chapter 6, 7, and 8, and right after before that, I would say, Solomon gets aid from the king Hiram, who is the king of the Tyre, the king of Lebanon, the king of the Hittite kingdom dynasty in the area. The temple is not a Jewish synagogue. It's something to announce God's name in the world. So the story that the Torah, the temple is, that the Bible is trying to teach us, as soon as Solomon builds the temple, the queen of Sheba, she comes from afar, and she comes to see the wisdom of Solomon, the justice of Solomon, the economical strength of Solomon. The temple is announcing, and then when she asked Solomon, "Wow, you're so great," Solomon says, "No, it's not me, it's God." The establishment of a temple means the establishment of God choosing of the people of Israel, who are those who hold God's name in the world. So just like after the Exodus from Egypt, and the entrance to the land of Israel in Canaan, the people of Israel don't yet build a temple. Because if Joshua, or in the time of the judges, they would have built a temple, it would have no meaning. Because the idea of a temple is a place that announces God's kingdom. When the people of Israel are weak, had not yet established their kingdom, there's no reason yet to build a temple. I once heard somebody who gave me a wonderful example to explain that. Imagine you're driving on a subway in New York, and suddenly this drunkard comes into the train and says, "Guys, God's great, guys. You have to follow God. God's great." People ignore him. People try to avoid the misconvenience. But imagine if Bill Gates puts up or somebody a major Mike Jordan announces, "Guys, wow! You saw this great victory? It's all God's." That, of course, has a much more greater impression. And that's the idea. When God chooses the people of Israel and chooses Abraham and says, "I want to rest your people so that you will be the representation of me as a blessing to all the nations," it means that when the people of Israel manage to establish a kingdom which people from all over the world are going to come and see, and then we build a temple and we say, "Guys, it's not us, it's him." That's the idea. On Tisha B'Av, on the day of mourning, what we're actually mourning? We're mourning the fact that we are not announcing God's kingdom in the world. Remind you that right after the destruction of the temple, the people of Israel go out to exile. And throughout history, the people of Israel in exile look like something that represents the past. They look like a total low nation. So what meaning would be if we have a temple? The temple that we're striving for, the temple that we so much would like to build, is a temple that will announce God's name in the world to all nations by showing that his people are strong. Today, in the state of Israel, when the people of Israel have come back home, and the state of Israel is developing one of the strongest economies in the world. It's developing a modern state. It's developing modern medicine. It's a leading country in technology. It's a leading country in so many other things. Now we can begin the temple era. Now we can say is the time that we are ready to build the temple and say to all the world, "You see how strong Israel is? You see how many miracles we've witnessed in the past century? None of this is ours. It is all his. It is all because he chose us and he wants us to represent him in this world." I'm just going to stop for a second the explanation and get to where we're standing right now. We've just concluded the southern side and we are hitched to the eastern wall. And the eastern wall is you can see it right over here to my right. And beyond the eastern wall is the Mount of Olives, is the Mount Scopus, is all, you can take a look through these little cracks in the wall, you can see Mount of Olives. And that was actually the eastern side of the Temple Mount in the time of the temple. And the main entrance to the temple would be from east. So right now, we will be approaching in a few seconds a spot where every single time we come here, this is where we try to recite prayers and calling out in the name of God. We will remember King David, who wrote the Psalms of how he was striving to build the temple. 132, King David says, "Zechor Adonai David remember his prayer and what he said. If I will go to my tent, in my tent if I go to sleep, until I find a place for God." What does it mean, a place for God? God's all over the world. A place that everybody in the world will recognize his kingdom of the world. So here we are. standing over here on the eastern side. We will, in just a few seconds, momentarily, we will be able to see the entrance of the location of the entrance of the temple, and we will be able to really be here. And at that moment, I'll try to recite a psalm, and then I believe we should give a few moments of quiet that all those who are watching us can connect. So Steve will definitely be able to recite a prayer, but before that, I want to remind you, the Temple Mount is the foundation of faith in the world, and therefore it's the place where Abraham announces his devotion to God. It's the place that we are here to connect. From Zion comes out the Word of God, from Jerusalem comes out the Torah, and this is the world, the center of prayer for all nations. And that is exactly what the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation is trying to do in the world, to announce God's kingdom to the world and to return the word to Jerusalem and from Jerusalem to the world. As I complete these words, I have just arrived at the eastern side of the temple location, and you can see where we are. This would be the eastern side. The temple is always from east to west, which represents the fact that the sun rising from the east is prostrating to God on the west, in the west of the Holy of Holies. And here I'll start with the Psalm, I'll start with Psalm 120, Shir LaMa'alot, Esayinai El Harim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, Ezri Me'im Adonai, Oseh Shamayim V'aretz, Alitein Lamot Raglecha, Al Yanum Shomrecha, Nei Lo Yanum V'lo Yishan, Shomer Yisrael. The guard of Israel, never going to sleep. God is your protector. God is your shade on your right side. Steve, if you want to join us now with a prayer, and then we'll maybe hear you. Yes, Steve, we can hear you. Yes.
Yes. Avinu Malkeinu, we just thank you, Father. We thank you, Lord, that you have restored your people to the land. That, Father, you have called them back from all nations and established them, Lord, and showing your faithfulness. Father, that we as the nations can look and see Israel and your promises coming to fruition right now, Lord. And Father, I'm just reminded, Lord, that you said that even a sparrow has a place near your altar. And Father, each of us have a place to draw close to you. Father, we just thank you for the work that you're doing. We thank you that you keep your promises. You're a God of faithfulness, Father, of covenant. And Lord, we find our rest in peace. We thank you for Yehudah. We thank you for, Father, his passion, Father, for you, for the temple, for all nations to come up and Father, be gathered to you. And we give you all praise and glory. Amen.
I believe that I would go like 2 minutes of 100% silent, where we can really enjoy prayer from the deep part of our hearts. Father in heaven, please remember all those who are searching for their soulmate. Father in heaven, please remember all those couples that are having trouble and having children. Father in heaven, please remember all those that are having trouble in their marriage. Father in heaven, please remember all those that are confronted by challenges of health, physical health, mental health, psychological, emotional health. Father in heaven, please remember those who are in financial need. You promise that all your blessings will come from here to all people. As Solomon in chapter 8 of Kings 1 said, all people praying to him, you will hear in the heaven. This is the gate of heaven. And you will listen to Jew and non-Jew, the foreigner and the sons of Israel. God, Father in heaven, please, we are coming to you. We know your love. You taught us in Hosea 11 that you love us so much, and you will pull us with rods of love. I want to especially right now mention the father of one of our workers in our team, Elisheva, who's going through her father, just going through a surgery right now. I also would like to recite some names of people that have requested prayers. We have Jacqueline King from Texas, Sharon Swanson from Illinois, Babar Shah from Pakistan, Ari Beperak from Malaysia, Roger Dodd from Louisville, Kentucky, Ron Fernandez from Minnesota, T. David Mitchell from Tennessee, and many, many, many others who are in need of prayer. We are right now over here at the World Center, the House of Prayer for All Nations. And from this place over here, I would like to call upon you, Father, our King, our Savior. Please remember us and please bless us. Bless us the blessing that Aaron blesses the world from over here. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'choneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yaseh lecha shalom. God shall bless you, preserve you, and protect you. He should enlight his face upon you and fill you with favor. He should raise his face upon you and put peace, shalom, harmony upon all of us. We are here, prayer, and as we are walking by, we see there are some people here today. It's wonderful to see. Shalom. Shalom, where are you from? Mokus Moredera. Ishtalmut. It's beautiful. There are tour guides from Israel, guys. When tourism comes back to Israel, you're welcome to take these tour guides, the most wonderful tour guides in Israel. Israel is really, so we're waiting for you. But wherever you are, remember, we're right now, this is Zoom. Where we have people here from all over the world that are right now following us. So, what? Oh, these are French-speaking tour guides. If you're French-speaking tour guide, we have here in Israel tour guides speaking every language you want, Chinese, Japanese, German. But this group over here is a group of French, and they're having a wonderful day. Shalom. Shalom. You can say shalom to them also. So here we are, back in our walk, in connecting past, present, and future. These people are tour guides, and I want to know that that tour guides these days are going through very difficult times because pretty much many of them are losing their jobs because there's no tourism because of COVID-19. A small little village. Remember they told us that's a global village? Well, that small little village, a small rural world, became a very big world. And there's no tourism coming here. But you're in our hearts. Wherever you are in the world, we're all in our hearts. And that's what the Temple Mount is all about. It's the connecting heaven and earth. It's the connecting Jew and Gentile. It's connecting young and elderly. It's connecting people from the past, people from the present, and people that are here building the future. All of you that are watching us right now, you are agents of change, changing the world's lens to a biblical lens. You are changing the world's lens on the lens of and the biblical lens. You are getting a biblical perspective of what's going on. And God says, open your eyes, look at what's going on. See that what is happening here is the hand of God. Miraculous things that are happening here. And we from here, and we from here are really blessed. By the way, we're also blessed that in our present time we have wonderful policemen from the Israeli police that are protecting us, and they're doing a wonderful job, and they're so nice. Majorly, their job is to let us walk around and not to interfere with what we're doing, and to allow us without any interference. I want to tell you that just a few years ago, whenever we would come onto the Temple Mount, whenever we would come here, there was a lot of turmoil here. There was a lot of harassment and incitement. today with our own eyes, thanks to a lot of the activity of many of the activists and the people who were together with us, together with the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation and the Temple Institute and the Temple Mount Heritage Faithful, and many of the others of organizations. You can very much read about it, as they said, in the temple in the shalomjerusalem.org. You can read. For instance, right now we're over here at a corner, which was established by Yitzchak and Talia Imas, who were two Jews who immigrated to Israel from the former Soviet Union, and they came to Israel. They had no knowledge of any Jewish background, and they studied their background, and they wanted to connect to the temple, and they started organizing groups coming up to the temple every single week. Every Tuesday they would ascend to the temple. Now, unfortunately, in 2010, they were murdered by a Palestinian terrorist near their house. But this corner over here was a place which was like a peace and quiet place. They would like to sit over here, and they would study Torah. They couldn't have their Bibles with them. To this day, we don't allow them to bring Bibles. At that time, they didn't have smartphones either. So they had to recite the Torah orally. And this place would be a quiet corner where they would sit and recite the Torah orally. In their memory, we actually call this over here the Torah School in memory of the Yitzchak and Talia Imas, which we actually make sure every time we go by here, we sit down and memorize their names, and we study some words from the Torah. And I think that it's only appropriate to recite the story of Solomon. And we can, I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship between God and the people of Israel, which we spoke about before. I think one of the things we can really feel it is when we talk about the Kruvim. The Kruvim are mentioned in the Bible 3 times. The first time is in the book of Genesis, when God sends Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, and he puts the Kruvim there to protect that we don't return. Because they are symbolizing the fact that the people of Israel are right now in a situation of anger between God and the people of Israel. The second time they're mentioned is in the tabernacle. The tabernacle, there are kruvim above the Ark of Covenant. They're small kruvim, they're like 3 feet high, and they're facing each other, and they're not touching each other. And the 2 kruvim represent Israel and God. And the time of the tabernacle, which represents the Mount Sinai receiving of the Torah, is the beginning of the relationship between God and Israel. We could call it the wedding. It's the beginning of the marriage, where the kruvim are facing each other, concentrating on each other, but they're still not part of each other. The third time we have the kruvim are in the time of Solomon. And as I mentioned before, the kingdom of Solomon, where Solomon builds the temple, he builds gigantic kruvim. They're, if the first ones were 3 feet high, which is 5 cubits. These we're talking about 10, 15. We're talking about 15 feet high. 15 feet high. They're 10 cubits, and they standing on the floor. They're not facing each other. They're facing the world, but they're holding hands. They're holding hands. I mean, they're together. Their marriage is stable. The relationship between God and the people of Israel was stable at the time. And they could bring the light of God to the world. They could face the world. They can concentrate on sharing their stability of the relationship between God and the people of Israel with the world. Unfortunately, at that point, where was like the peak of the history of the people of Israel, didn't last, because the history of the relationship between God and the people of Israel throughout the history, we had ups and downs, and now. We believe that the third temple time is the eternal time that God is going to return to the people of Israel, and the covenant will be an eternal covenant. And that's where we are right now. Now, it can't happen in one day. It's a process. But when we always remember the fact that there was a day of destruction, we always remember the fact that things can go wrong, and therefore don't take anything for granted. And one of the things that we remember when in the book of Zechariah chapter 7, when there's these group of emissaries from Babylon come to Zechariah, and they say, shall we continue fasting as we did in the first time temple? And it was already there at the beginning of the building of the second temple. And Zechariah says, if you're asking the question, you have to understand, you are the ones that need the fasting, not God. The question is your relationship to God strong? Does that mean Do you remember the orphan and the widow? Do you remember other people that are in need? This is what Zechariah says. Zechariah says, my house is not just a temple, go ahead and build it. It's not a piece of real estate. Give me $1 million and I'll build a temple. A temple is something that represents the relationship between God and the people of Israel, and the Israelites serving as priests for all the nations, serving as a kingdom of God in the world. So if you're ready for that, God says, then you can build a temple. Go ahead. But if you people just want to build a temple, anyway, so we're back to the Bet Midrash of Yitzchak Imas, and we're going to continue now exactly where we are. To my right now over here is the remnant of the gate of mercy, the golden gate. Are you guys ready? Mukhanim? Oh, the policeman wants us to wait. Okay, we're going to wait a few more seconds. They're joining us. Somebody else is joining us, so they want us to wait for a few more seconds. So we're going to wait for a few more seconds. What?
Open hours of the gate.
Open on Shabbat?
Okay, now the Temple Mount. Just a little bit about the Temple Mount. First of all, I'm privileged to be here today with Melissa.
Okay, so
Melissa is the one who's here to develop challenges for me and to remind me that things are not so easy in life.
I think your life is challenging enough.
And Melissa reminded me to tell you people a little about what the situation today on Temple Mount. Temple Mount today, there are right now 10 gates in the Temple Mount, which you can enter through them. Well, if you happen to be Muslim, you can enter through 9 of the 10, because the 9 of the 10 Muslim gates are open for Muslims, and they're open 7 days a week, almost 12 hours a day. That's if you happen to be Muslim. If you happen not to be Muslim, then there's one gate which is open. It's open 4 hours a day. It's open from 7:30 in the morning until 11 or 10 when you're in the winter or the summer, but it's either to 10 or to 11. And then 1 more hour in the afternoon. Shabbat, it's open Sunday through Thursday. Sunday through Thursday, as I said, 7:30 in the morning until 11 in the summer, until 10 in the morning in the winter, and 1 more hour between 12:30 and 1:30, or 1:30 and 2:30, whether it's winter or summer. But 5 days a week, so it's like 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. As I said before, the Muslims can enter from any one of the gates. They can carry with them anything they want. They don't go through any examining their bags on their entrance, not checking them from God forbid arms or any kind of a knife or pistols, but also not only checking for anything else. Jews or Christians or anybody else who comes in from that one gate, which is located right near the Dung Gate in the Western Wall, is you cannot enter with anything that has to do with a religious item, whether it's a Magen David or a Bible. So anything else, you're not allowed to enter the temple with any of those things. And so the Temple Mount is open now only for those who are, as I said, it's freely open for Muslims. It's 9 of the gates, 1 gate for non-Muslims, but it's also something very important to know that things have changed. Many years ago, when I started going to Temple Mount in 1989, they were allowing only 2 Jews at a time, and we had to go and you had to wait for an hour till the one that they finished. Today, they're allowing much bigger groups. Till 5 years ago, every single time we came here, there was screaming and harassment, and they threw chairs at us and stones at us and shoes, anything you wanted. I personally, 5 years ago, there was an attempt to assassinate me because I was encouraging people to come to the Temple Mount.
Yes.
Thank God things like that have changed right now. Even though just a few weeks ago there was an attempt to beat me up once again. But I can say that thank God visiting the Temple Mount today is much more quiet. At the time, anybody who came to the Temple Mount who was not Muslim was considered a nuisance. And in the eyes of everybody, you guys, what are you doing here? Are you wasting your time?
We're not now.
But right now, I want to do something very, very important. And that is to ask if anybody here is willing to do me a favor and call my wife because she's looking for me.
Yeah, on it.
And okay, let's call Hadass and see what she's won, because that's the real life.
What is that?
And Hadassah, that's the most wonderful person in the world. and I'm very objective at the issue. And I want to tell you that I have the privilege of being married to Hadass, whose life is totally devoted to lives of orphans and widows, and she's doing so many great deeds, and it's for her sake and because of her that I had the privilege of doing whatever I'm doing, and everything I have is all hers. So she needs me, then we have to find out what she needs. Going back, as I said, going back to Temple Mound, we are talking about all the gates that are open. But right now, to my right over here is the Golden Gate, which is blocked from the outside. It was several years ago. The Muslims blocked the entrance because there was a belief or a faith tradition that that the Messiah would be coming from this gate. So they actually blocked the gate, and now there's no entrance for anybody there. But it was also, the whole area was closed. Like a few months ago, the Muslims decided to break through the gate, and still can't go through from the gate to the outside, but inside the compound of the gate, there's a place for Muslim worship. Okay. Pray for my. Okay, so we're praying here today for my daughter, Rachel, who's having a very important exam today, and that's in her majors in mathematics, her bagrut in mathematics, and we're praying for Ifat, that's my wife's daughter, who has a psychometry exam on Thursday. So that's what we're here for today. We're praying for the present, I said, as just as much as the future. Every one of those, both my daughter and my wife's daughter, for them, their exams are the most important thing existing right now in the world. So everybody has things about what we can sometimes joke about what things are most important. Sometimes we see a little kid who's crying because he lost a piece of candy, but mostly God looks at us also. Sometimes many of our requests in his eyes may be something that they're not worthy, but actually that's not the way God looks at us. God takes us seriously. Whatever we're requesting, whatever we're praying for, whatever we're doing, and we have to be so thankful that we are lucky to have the God of Israel, who's the God of the world, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we are... Yes, Sagi family whose father passed away this week, and we were there on Shabbat, and we're asking that God should strengthen the family and give them comfort, and from here fill their heart and their life with a strong love and life of God. Are we ready to go ahead? Here we are. As I said, we're continuing on our walk. To my right, as I said, was the Golden Gate. Now, we spoke before about the temple built by Solomon. We spoke about the cedar wood that Solomon received from Hiram, the king of Tyre in Lebanon. Now, some of that cedar wood may surprise you. You may be pretty shocked, but in 1929, there was an earthquake, and that very much damaged the Temple Mount. And one of the things that were damaged was the mosque of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And when they were trying to repair it, they found underneath in the bottom several logs of wood. They found like 200 logs, but some 15 of them were taken to be inspected by what's called carbon-14, and they were, and they were identified. 15 of them were identified as cedar, 3,000 years old. Now, as everything else on the Temple Mount, you can't touch anything because everything is provocative. If you can look at the corner under me right over here, there's a big canvas, a white canvas. Under it are logs of wood. Several of them are cedar wood from the time of King Solomon. They're laying over here right now because they're not. You can't put them anywhere else because right now it's a dispute between the Jews and the Muslims. To the right of that, as I said, you can see over here the two entrances to the Golden Gate, which, as I said, were invaded a few months ago by the Muslims here who wanted to turn them into a prayer corner. But I want to say, in my eyes, I don't mind anybody who wants to pray on Temple Mount. Wherever you're praying, however you're praying, is you're praying to the one and only God, and you can do it wherever you want. The Temple Mount should be a house of prayer for all nations, all those who are praying to the one and only God. And now I want to take us a little bit back to modern history. Okay? Modern history. As you all know, the State of Israel was established in 1948. 19 years later, in 1967, the State of Israel is under threat. We are a population of 2 million, surrounded by 200 million who are determined to erase the State of Israel from the face of the earth. And the Egyptians and the Syrians, the Egyptians on our west, on our south, the Syrians on our north, together with the Jordanian Hashemite kingdom, cooperate and actually force us to go out to war. They block our water, sources in the north. They block our export sources in the south. The how do you call it? Tiran, the Strait of Tiran, which are our tunnel to Asia, and pretty much Israel was at stake, and we were forced to go out to war. And as we were towards those days of war, we were begging the world to help us survive. That's all we wanted to do, was to survive. But the coalition of the countries against us were ready to wipe us out, and they were sure that that's what's going to happen. But God had other plans. Within 6 days, we managed to overcome our enemies and all of our borders. And the peak of it all was when the paratroopers entered the Temple Mount, and they announced, Temple Mount is in our hands. If you look to my right over here, we have the path which leads to the gate of the Lion's Gate and the Tribe's Gate. This is the path where the paratroopers went in 1967 as they ran up to the Temple Mount, and they announced, Har Habayit biyadenu. Temple Mount is in our hands. For the first time, after thousands of years, the people of Israel had returned to the Temple Mount. And every single time I repeat those words, Har Habayit biyadenu, Temple Mount is in our hands, I must say that my whole body shivers because it really is something that is definitely beyond anything that can be explained naturally. It's a pure, miraculous, biblical intervention of God in the world in our times, where we can see miracles with our own eyes. Talking about a nation who had established its country, independent state, in the historical land of the Bible. 20 years earlier, 25 years earlier, we were under threat of destruction of our entire nation, with the final solution, where the final solution, I'm not talking about the solution of the Jewish-Palestinian conflict, I'm talking about the final solution, where Adolf Hitler announces he's going to save the world by destroying the people of Israel. And this nation, where a third of our nation was wiped out just 25 years earlier, had now here in the land, in the chosen land by God, we're standing over here and announcing to the world, we have overcome. We were a population of 2 million, and we overcame the strongest armies in the Middle East. We overcame the Egyptians and Syrians, which had the most modern planes, which they received from the French. Israel had leftovers from First World War. The Egyptians and the Syrians had the newest Soviet ammunition, the newest Soviet tanks, the newest Soviet MiG airplanes. They had everything, and we were there's no other explanation but one. God had accompanied us. But now it's in our hands to put essence into these great events of our times. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. When we are encouraging people to come to Temple Mount, to connect to Temple Mount, to receive Torah and to turn the Temple Mount into the foundation of faith. And when we're doing that, we are trying to continue and establish God's announcement of his name in the world, God's reputation recognized in the world by the victories of the people of Israel. And once again, I remind us all that the Zionist movement, the return of the people of Israel to Zion, the return of the people of Israel to the land, to Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, are not for the sake of the people of Israel, but for the sake of the mission, the assignment of the people of Israel in the world, to serve as a light, as a source of connection to God in the world. Right now, we're climbing up, and we will be closest to the temple location itself. We're on the northern side right now. We are right now on the northern side, and we are getting very, very close to the location of the temple itself. You can see the Dome of the Rock standing right in front of us. And I want to tell you, the Dome of the Rock, which is a very impressive building, is 20 meters high. The temple was double the height. So if you can imagine this gigantic building, which announced the name of God to the world, and nations coming over here and recognizing God's name right over here, not as a worship center for one people, but as a worship center for the entire world, for God. This is the continuation of what Abraham was doing in the world, calling out upon God's name to the world, calling out upon the recognition of God in the world, calling out upon the understanding that we're not here to make a name for ourselves, as did the people of Babylon. Well, actually, the reason they did it was they wanted to prevent another flood. But the idea of God was no, that his name should be recognized in the world. His name should be recognized in the world, as Abraham did, and this is the location of where Abraham also taught us faith. This is the location of where Abraham binded his son in the famous story in the book of Genesis, where he binds his son, and he says to God, I'm ready to serve you in every way. And God says, I don't want any human sacrifices, offerings. I want offerings of, I want your heart. I want you to worship God. What happened to Eli? Did he get lost? What?
Yeah, he said he wants something to close with.
Okay. So anyway, so here we are, as I said, on the northern side. I want to remind you that right over here was the place where the Sanhedrin sat. And the Sanhedrin was the supreme court of justice in the world, God's justice in the world, sitting over here. Because the house of God is not a house that the aristocratic part of the segment of the people are here to be respected, but it's a place where they're supposed to bring justice of all to all, and it's a place where we're worshiping God means remembering those who are transparent. It's the place of the service of God. It's the national, the international, global, universal center of God in the world, and that's exactly where we are right now. And that's maybe we'll recite one more psalm. I will go for 125. Shir HaMa'alot L'Shlomo. Im Adonai lo yivneh bayit, shav amlu bonav bo. If God doesn't build a house, those who are trying to build it by themselves are working in vain. Im Adonai lo yishmor ir, shav shakad shomer. If God does not protect the city, it's in vain are those who are guarding it. Shav lachem mashkimei kum ochlei lechem. God says, don't even waste your time. But God is saying, doesn't saying don't build. He's saying go ahead and build, but remember that He's accompanying us. Whereas it says in Psalm 126, Shir HaMa'alot habotchim b'Adonai kehar Tzion lo yimot lo'olam yeshev. Yerushalayim harim saviv lamo. God is around His people, just like Jerusalem is surrounded by mountains. And Shir HaMa'alot, number 134. Hinei baruchu et Adonai kol avdei Adonai haomdim bebeit Adonai balelot tzuyidechem kodesh ubaruchu et Adonai yivarcha Adonai mitzion osei shamayim v'aretz. Or 133 Shir HaMa'alot leDavid hinei matov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad kashemen hatov al harosh yired al hazkan Kital Chirmon Yered Harei Tion Ki Sham Tziva Adonai et Habracha Chayim Ad Haolam. He says
the vessel we're preparing.
What?
The vessel that we're still preparing for the day.
Yeah, so in the Temple Institute right over here, they're preparing the vessels of the temple. But actually the most important vessel is the soul and the hearts of the humankind. And that's what we're here in the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. We're trying to prepare this very important vessel so we can announce the establishment of the temple. We can announce the rebuilding of the temple. And once again, we're here preparing for Tisha B'Av, and we're saying that Tisha B'Av is the day that we remember the need of the rebuild. It's the day we remember the need to rebuild and to reestablish God's name in the world. Anyway, okay, so we're going back onto our path. What were anybody want to say and mention something?
So even though this is the Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning, everything I'm hearing from you, Yehudah, is not about. It's about a future. It's about a hope. It's about seeing God's promises come true. So
by all means, look,
to build a future.
There's no reason for it to sit and cry and without any content to that crying. The whole content that we're to say is that the day of mourning is a day, as I said before in Zechariah 7, when he answers the question, he says the fasting is not the essence of the whole thing. The mourning is not the essence of the whole thing. The essence of the whole thing is what's the purpose of the temple, and that's the idea. In the day of Tisha B'Av, we're not just to sit and cry, and that's the goal. The goal is to understand what we're lacking, to understand what we're missing, and to express our desire to be able to complete what is missing. And I think that's a very important point you put your finger on right now. Tisha B'Av is not just a day to sit and cry. It's a day that we express our desire to complete what needs being completed. It's a day that we express our desire to repair and to heal the ill. Imagine somebody seeing a child run over in the car on the street, and he goes on the side and sits and crying. No, the idea is to go save the child. The idea is to go call the ambulance to come and heal the child. There's no meaning of just crying for the sake of crying. There's no meaning of just sitting and mourning for the sake of mourning. It's mourning for time to think of what we're lacking. It's mourning for understanding the concept of the need for the rebuilding, and that's what the whole story is all about. So I'm very happy you asked the question, because sometimes people get overwhelmed by the ability to cry and to weep and to mourn, where actually our main goal is to try to learn the lesson and to try to improve ourselves and to upgrade the world, to turn the world into a better world to live in. We see no aim at just the fact that we cry. That's not the goal of our life.
I'm looking at Zechariah 8, because we've been quoting Zechariah 8, and I'm finding that God is the greatest Zionist of all. He says, "I am zealous for Zion with a great zeal, with great fervor."
I'm not hearing. I'm not hearing you very well. Can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah. I just realized that God is probably the greatest Zionist ever. We've been quoting Zechariah 8. And in verse 2, he says, "I am zealous for Zion with a great zeal." God is a Zionist. He wants his house rebuilt.
Yes. What God says, that these days of mourning will become days of joy if we understand and take the concept of those who are in need, like the widow and the orphan. If we make this world into a better world, then we can once again rebuild the temple. The temple is to be there for God's service. That's what he's trying to say there. He's trying to say, when they come to and say to him, should we continue fasting? He says to them, guys, I didn't tell you to fast, and God didn't tell you to fast. The fasting is for your sake. Did you learn the lesson yet, or did you not learn the lesson yet?
Yes.
And I would say that, and that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to be involved in turning the whole concept of the temple, the whole concept of shalom, peace, not only as something which talks about tolerance, we talk about something that talks about harmony in the world, something that it represents the peace among all nations of the world, peace among and bringing peace to the world, meaning establishing a peaceful society, establishing a society that respects all and knows to give a place for every single individual. And so I think that if we are right now over here, when I speak about the goals that we try to take upon ourselves, it's really turning this world into a better world. And every one of us can ask himself, how can I contribute to turning this world into a better world? What can I do to turn this world into a peaceful world, a world of inclusiveness, a world of respecting all human beings created by the image of God? And now the whole idea of rebuilding the temple is fixing up the lack of the temple serving as its purpose of uniting the whole world. And that is, I think, the most important mission that we have, I believe, in our generation, is uniting the world around God, because the world is spread out and separated, and we are living in a time where we have the ability, we have the technology, we have the communication, and now maybe this corona virus has told us, stop concentrating on becoming, on showing how great we are, but concentrate on showing how great He is. And I think the corona was like God pressing on the brakes, because the whole world was running towards now developing the world is something very good. It's important to upgrade the world. It's also important to develop all technology. I'm not talking against it. The only question is, do we stop and think, for what purpose? Is it for a purpose of showing off how great we are as people, or is it for something to show how great we are all together here to announce the light of God in the world? I want to point out that right now we are on the western side, and that means, first of all, we're close to the exit, but also we are close to the location of the Holy of Holies. We will be standing right now in a few seconds up on before we stood and prayed on the eastern side and on the northern side. Right now we will be standing and reciting our final prayer on the western side, closest to the Holy of Holies. Here we can pray to God that He shall succeed in teaching the world what means worshiping Him in justice, in the ways of faithfulness, mercy. And here we are approaching the western side of the Temple Mount, right opposite the location of the Temple of the Holy of Holies. You can see here, right in front of me, the Dome of the Rock. Now, here we're looking at the Dome of the Rock from the western side. You can see there's a door. Inside the door, there's light, and those lights are right on top of the stone, which is the foundation stone of the world. And this whole dome here was built to protect that stone. The whole dome here was built for the sake of remembering where the temple stood. It's here. It's not marking the temple where the temple served. Shalom. Where are you from? Nazareth. Shalom. Shalom. So here we have people here, Nazareth, came to the Temple Mound, and here we can see, as I said, on the western side, and we can pray to God. Please, dear our King, from your place, appear in front of us and rule on all of the world, on all the earth, on all of humanity, because we are waiting for you. When will you come and announce your kingdom here in Zion? As soon as possible, very soon in our times. And you will stand here and you will rest here eternally, forever and ever. Your name will grow and grow and be so sanctified in the world. From Jerusalem towards the entire world. Also by King David, your Messiah. And hopefully we will see in our times that the month of Av becomes a month of a celebration. And the day of Tisha B'Av becomes a day of celebration. So here we are, almost on our way out of the Temple Mount. It's always one of the difficult parts where we try to concentrate on taking with us. We who are here, we actually recharge our spiritual batteries. Just like you put your cell phone connected to the origin of energy, and then you disconnect it and it's on its own. Now we are taking the strongest energy of the world, the power of God, and we want to take it with us. And we want Him who makes peace in heaven to make peace upon the world, to make shalom upon all peoples, to bring health to all nations, to bring success to all nations. I was thinking this week, I heard there was a film, PR, that was put together by Taiwan. Taiwan is a country that many of the nations in the world don't recognize it. And then I saw they put up a film that's showing that how safe they were and how successful they were in the COVID-19 period. And they're trying to say, guys, now is the time to learn a little bit more about Taiwan. And I say, when throughout the history, when the people of Israel were looked down at, and we were so weak, people didn't refer to us. But now that the state of Israel is so strong and so successful, for God's name, Yimloch Adonai La'olam Elohayich Tzion L'dor V'dor Hallelujah. God should rule of the world, and forever and ever, He will be the King of Zion, King of the world. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel. Our God is the one God of the world. Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach. Forever and ever. Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Yimloch L'olam V'ed. God is King, God was King, and God will be King forever and ever. Here we are leaving. One of our customs is to leave facing the temple location, and we walk back. And watch out, there's a step over here. We're walking back, and we're saying to God, we're hoping that from now on, we would like to repair this world with your kingdom. God will be a king over all the world, over all universe, over all nations. On that day, God will be one, His name will be one, and He will be one forever. We're right now leaving the Temple Mount, taking the joy of Temple Mount with us, and praying to God. Here we see people are prostrating outside they're allowing us to prostrate. Here we are, praising God, and just conclude with a song of thanks to God. Ki beita tovot elai, ki igdalta chasdecha alai, umashiv lach, ve'hakol shelach, lecha shamayim, aferet lach, umashiv lach, והכל שלך, לך שמיים, עפרת לך, ואנחנו עמך, עמך וצונך, איי 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 חפצים לעשות רצונך, ואנחנו עמך, עמך וצונך, איי 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 חפצים לעשות רצונך. We're praying to God that we will succeed in understanding the mission of taking whatever we've taken from here, connecting our life to eternity, and serving Him as His servant forever and ever. And as we will be mourning and crying the sad things, we will be able to rebuild and establish His house, His kingdom over the entire universe and all of humanity. Shalom.
Quickly.
Oh.
Thank you for joining us today. To learn more about the nation's 9th of Av and how you can be part of the conversation, visit us at 9-av.com.